Welcome back to Legacy Contracts, and if this is your first time here, we're glad you found us. This channel exists for attorneys who sense that something beneath the surface of their firm isn't quite working, even if it's hard to name. Here, we look beyond surface-level efficiency and into the invisible systems shaping how your firm operates, serves clients, and sustains growth. Through practical insight and honest conversation, we help bring clarity to what's often overlooked, so you can lead with intention, not assumption. If you're interested in building a law firm that's not just functional but thoughtfully designed, you're in the right place. Let's begin. If you've ever felt like you fixed the same problem inside your law firm more than once, you're not imagining it. You solve it, things improve, and then a few weeks or months later it's back, the same bottlenecks, the same communication issues, the same delays, and eventually you start asking, why doesn't anything stay fixed? This isn't a rare situation. In fact, it's one of the most common operational patterns across law firms. And the reason it happens has very little to do with effort or even competence. The real reason some problems never stay solved is because they were never actually solved in the first place. They were managed, temporarily addressed and worked around, but not structurally fixed. Let's break that down. Most operational issues show up as symptoms: a missed deadline, a frustrated client, a team member dropping the ball. And when that happens, the natural response is to fix the immediate issue. You follow up, you correct the mistake, you clarify expectations, and in that moment the problem feels resolved. But what's often missing is a deeper question. Why did this happen in the first place? Not just on the surface, but at a structural level. Because if the underlying cause isn't identified, the same conditions still exist, which means the same outcome is likely to happen again. This is where most firms get stuck. They're very good at reacting, but they don't have a clear system for diagnosing. So instead of fixing root causes, they keep treating symptoms. And over time, that creates a cycle. Problem then fix, then temporary improvement, rinse and repeat. Let's look at a simple example. A task gets delayed because a team member didn't have the information they needed. So you step in, clarify the details, and get things moving again. Problem solved, at least on the surface. But what actually caused the delay? Was the intake process incomplete? Was there no standardized handoff? Was ownership unclear? If those underlying gaps aren't addressed, the same situation will happen again, just with a different task or a different person. And when it does, it feels like a new problem. But it's not. It's the same problem showing up in a slightly different way. This is what makes operational issues so frustrating. They're rarely isolated. They're patterns, and patterns don't change unless the system that creates them changes. Now here's where it gets more complicated, because most firms, when they notice recurring issues, respond by adding more structure, more processes, more tools, more oversight. And that seems logical. If something keeps breaking, add more control. But more structure doesn't automatically lead to better outcomes. In fact, if the underlying system isn't clear, adding more layers can actually make things worse. Now you have more steps to follow, more places for communication to break down, more complexity for your team to navigate. And instead of eliminating the problem, you've just made it harder to see. So now when something goes wrong, it's even less clear why. This is why some firms feel like they're constantly managing chaos, even though they've added systems. Because the issue isn't a lack of structure, it's a lack of clarity. Clarity in how work actually flows through the firm. Clarity in who owns what. Clarity in where delays are happening and why. Without that clarity, every fix is a guess. And when you rely on guesswork, consistency becomes almost impossible. Let's talk about another example: billing. A firm notices that some billable time isn't being captured, so they remind the team to track time more carefully. Maybe they even implement a new tool, and for a while it improves. But then, slowly, things start slipping again. Why? Because the issue wasn't just people forgetting. It could be the workflow makes time tracking inconvenient. There's no clear checkpoint for logging time, or the expectations aren't consistently reinforced, so the behavior reverts. Not because people don't care, but because the system doesn't support consistency. This is the difference between a behavioral fix and a structural fix. Behavioral fixes rely on people remembering to do something differently. Structural fixes make the right behavior the default, and only one of those scales. The same pattern shows up in team communication. If updates aren't consistent, you might tell your team to communicate more. But unless there's a defined system for when, where, and how updates happen, that instruction is vague. So everyone interprets it differently, and inconsistency continues. Again, not a people problem, a system problem. This is the core idea. If a problem keeps coming back, it's not random. It's being recreated by your current system. And until you understand how that system is producing the outcome, you can't change it. That's why lasting operational improvements don't start with solutions. They start with visibility. You have to be able to see where the breakdown is happening, what conditions are causing it, and how often it occurs. Because frequency matters. A one-time issue is manageable. A recurring issue is costly, and those costs are often invisible. They show up as extra time spent fixing things, delays that compound across multiple matters, missed opportunities for efficiency. Individually, they don't seem significant, but together they create drag across your entire operation. And that drag limits your firm's capacity. It affects how much work you can take on, how efficiently your team performs, and ultimately how much revenue you generate. But because it's not tied to a single event, it's easy to overlook. Which brings us back to the original question: why don't some problems stay solved? Because they were addressed at the surface level, not at the system level. So what does it look like to fix that? It starts with stepping out of reaction mode. Instead of asking, how do we fix this issue, you ask, what's consistently causing this issue to happen? That shift changes everything. Now you're not chasing problems. You're identifying patterns. And once you can see patterns, you can redesign the system that creates them. That might mean standardizing a workflow, clarifying ownership, simplifying a process, or removing unnecessary steps. The goal isn't to add more, it's to make the system clearer and more consistent, because consistency is what makes improvements stick. Without it, every solution is temporary. Now, this kind of analysis is difficult to do from the inside. When you're in the day-to-day, everything feels urgent. You're focused on keeping things moving. And that makes it hard to step back and see the bigger picture, which is why most firms don't have a clear, objective view of their operations. They know something feels off, but they can't fully quantify where the issues are or how much they're costing. And that's exactly where we see the biggest opportunity. Because once you can clearly identify where time is being lost, where workflows are breaking down, and where revenue might be leaking, you can start making targeted improvements. Not guesses, not broad changes, precise adjustments that address the root cause. That's the difference between temporary fixes and lasting solutions. If this sounds familiar, if you've been dealing with the same issues more than once, it's not a failure. It's a signal that there's a deeper pattern that hasn't been fully surfaced yet. And once you bring that pattern into view, you can finally address it in a way that lasts. If you want a structured way to do that, the next step is simple. Start with the invisible cost diagnostic. It's a short, 5-minute assessment designed to highlight where your firm may be experiencing recurring operational gaps. From there, you can see whether an invisible cost report makes sense for your firm. That report takes a closer look at how your operation is functioning, identifies the patterns behind recurring issues, and outlines clear next steps to address them. Because once you understand why problems keep coming back, you can finally stop fixing them and start eliminating them. We hope today's insight helped bring clarity to something that may have been operating quietly in the background of your firm. Progress doesn't always start with doing more. It often starts with seeing more clearly. Law firms aren't built overnight. They're shaped by the decisions you make once the invisible becomes visible. This is Legacy Contracts, and until next time, keep leading with clarity.